And that's why it doesn't really matter if you're trying to be productive. What's going on, everybody? This is the Cover Band Confidential Podcast, the podcast for cover band musicians and band leaders to learn how to rock more and suck less. In Atlanta, Georgia, I'm Adam Johnson.
In Greensboro, North Carolina, I'm Dan Ray.
So, folks, you guys don't always get to see what's going on behind the curtain, but like we literally just recorded an entire
Pretty much.
Full episode before pulling the trigger on this one.
Yeah, we call it like planning the episode, but in fact, we just did the episode. Those of you who are patrons will get that audio. So that's...
Yes, those of you at the $10 level do get the behind the scenes stuff. And we're talking like, at this point, it's like hours and hours of stuff.
It really is.
Some of it's actually worth listening to.
Yeah, true. Maybe not tonight, but some nights. Yeah.
I don't know. I think folks may learn a fair amount about you and I that we may not necessarily tip our hand on.
We're a little uncensored compared to the general podcast.
Yeah, you're going to get a little more of that, but also just inside thoughts and all of those kinds of things. Right. Well, how's your week been, man?
Week has been good. My week has been good. We had a rehearsal on Saturday. We've now changed our recording night. We usually record on Thursdays. We're still dropping the podcast on Thursdays, so we've changed the recording to Sunday. Works better in our lives. So
100%.
Saturday, had a rehearsal with the band in prep for a show next Saturday. And it was the first time we'd seen each other all together in a room in like a month, something like that.
Yep.
So it was really good. I had some feedback from the last show. I listened through to it and had some notes for the folks. We do a bunch of songs that are medley-ish, or at least the path from song to song is laid out. We don't stop and start between songs and several chunks of songs. And in our last show, the path between tunes got a little mushy. It was like not until 8 bars in, it was clear we were doing a new thing. So we spent a lot of good time kind of crisping up those transitions and making it nice and tight. So that was a good time. And then I did the trivia last week. Theme was One Hit Wonders, which is one of my harder themes. And this show, I got to tell you, this show is entirely about crowd engagement, 100% about crowd engagement, because the model of it here is every team has a hand percussion instrument. I've got a bag of like cowbells and tambourines and stuff like that. I start playing a song. When they recognize a song, they ring in on the instrument and I call on them. And then it's very like shout out and you go across. I'd love to use in-ears for this thing, but I got to hear the room because people are shouting their answers. And it starts at 7:00, and typically at 6:30, I have nobody there to play. I have some regulars who do turn up at like 5 minutes to 7, but the time between 6:30 and 7:00 is about hustling the room and getting people interested and getting players engaged. And I've honed my spiel about that, and I've honed my sort of charisma, my native sort of talking to peopleness about that, to the point that I can usually get 2 or 3 teams stood up, didn't know it was happening or didn't plan to come for that or whatever it was. I can turn them into players. And then they have such a fun time. It's such a great time that often they come back week after week, or at least I see them again. This last week, there's a woman who I talked into playing, and she was great. She ended up with like 4 points. The winners had like 25 and she had 4, but she was proud of those 4 points. She'd earned them. And then some of my regulars asked for an encore at the end of the night, which I usually don't do, but I have been learning Take Me to Church, Hosier. And so I did that one. But this one woman was like, I'm out of here, guys. Yeah, it's a good time. I gotta go. And she was like halfway out the door when I started that song. My baby's got a humor. She's a giggle at a funeral. And like she literally did a 180 at the door, came back in, sat down. I was like, all right, good. That feels good. That feels good. I like that.
Nice.
So we're growing the trivia at this new location, and it's getting good. Week after week, we're turning it into something. So all really promising.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
So we did a rehearsal too.
Yes.
This past week. So we got the guys together, including the new bass player. And I had mentioned it in the Patreon Slack that was just like kind of pointless in the best kind of way. It was just a situation where like the core guys were in the room just working through stuff. And we played a bunch of stuff we'll never play live. We played a bunch of stuff like we hadn't played in a while.
Yeah.
And it was just making music for the sake of making it.
Yes.
And it was awesome. And it was much needed.
And listen, sometimes it's productive.
I didn't realize how much I needed.
Last week it was just Charlie, my drummer, and me. We just played around with a bunch of the like big list of stuff that maybe we'll tackle someday. And one of them, like we realized we really could do. And so it's on the set list for next week. Hey Ya, Outcast. No reason not to do that one. It's in some ways kind of a trivial tune, technically. As long as my bassist has the basic of it, I can do all the ad-lib business on top of it.
Yeah.
But that came out of like, just mess around, and we tried 30 things, but one's gonna be in the show next week. So
yeah,
that's good.
So in saying that, like, oh, it wasn't productive and it was kind of pointless, it was super productive as well. We got this show coming up this coming Saturday, and we ended up running through 2 of the new songs that we haven't played ever before. So one of them being the Kyrie Mr. Mr., which was so much fun. And then we did Simply Irresistible also.
Nice.
We tried New Sensation, but we didn't have the guide tracks dialed in right. And just kind of like fell apart there on the back third. So, in our situation, we've got 2 hours and 46 minutes worth of music, and we might do 2 full hours worth of tunes.
Yeah.
So we've got a lot of potential flexibility there. But one of the things that we ended up doing is that we do always something there to remind me. And instead of doing the version that we have been doing for a while, we actually were considering going back to the version we did before that, which was the Marvelous 3 version. And I say that because for those who are aware of that particular band, you would know that over the past 2 weeks, they have announced that they're getting back together. So that was kind of like a timely thing to kind of pull back into rotation. And as a huge fan of that particular band, like the 17-year-old me is just absolutely beside themselves about the prospect of seeing those guys again. So I'm really excited about doing that version of that song.
Very cool.
What's coming up? What's coming up this week?
Listen, trivia every Thursday all through the whole month. And then I've got a full band gig at a place that used to be home base for my previous project, Pig Pounder Brewing in Greensboro. And so this is the first time the new project will be playing there. And we have, I think, 3 dates on the books through the summer. Hopefully feedback will make it up to the manager, who is already a fan of me. I do the karaoke there fairly regularly. Hopefully we'll end up with a little more coverage on the calendar at that spot, because it's a fun place. Or at least, here's the thing, it used to be. Pre-COVID, it was super fun. On Friday nights, doing the trivia, or sorry, pardon, the karaoke or the acoustic duo, like we'd pack the joint. I don't know, maybe the heat's off that place a little bit. I've not had big nights there the way that I used to very regularly. So I don't know. We'll see. The band will play. My folks will come out. All my regulars will be there, I'm sure, and we'll have a great time. I'm also looking at getting a friend of mine who's a photographer out. Steven Strobel is his name, and he recently had a photo on the cover of Our State magazine, which in North Carolina is a massive deal to be like the photographer on the cover of Our State magazine is a huge credential. And he's shot us before. He's did really great work. Fully understands like a photographer for a band. Their job is to capture you looking cool and people having fun. Those are the 2 things. And he totally gets that. And so I've hit him up on Facebook, and I hope he'll be there. It's always a gamble, when you don't know quite what the turnout's going to be. Like, am I going to pay for a photographer for a night that like we're playing to an empty space? So I'm taking that gamble this time. We'll see.
I'm currently weighing that gamble for this thing coming up on Saturday.
Totally, yeah.
So in our world, I did a walkthrough / kind of meet and greet for this live band karaoke thing that we're doing 2 Thursdays from now. It's the 15th of May. And it's a new thing. The concept is kind of unique. We haven't done this before, but they are orchestrating it like it's a singing competition.
Huh.
So we're more like the house band than a quote unquote karaoke group.
So are the competitors bringing their own songs?
So the orchestrator, like organizer folks, took our list, gave it to all of the prospective contestants, and we've gotten a couple of special requests. Nothing out of the ordinary. So we'll probably roll those in. But that's kind of the intent. They've got 10 to 20 people competing, and in filling the gaps, we're either going to just do like play as a band, or we'll open up the karaoke to other attendees.
Yeah.
So it's pretty well sussed out, And
And are you on stage with them or like in a pit or something?
No. It's literally like it's a clamshell kind of, audience situation where they say like the crowd's going to be between 500 and 800 folks.
Huh.
And we're basically the house band for this competition.
Cool.
But it's a commercial real estate networking thing, so could be very advantageous to be around those folks. And I definitely shook a bunch of hands and told a bunch of people what we did, and was quoting well above our normal rate.
Yes.
Just to kind of get out there. And it's been like that. We had another inquiry for live band karaoke the week after that. 60 minutes worth of karaoke. We're charging the same amount that we did for the other client, who is doing maybe 3 times that length. And then we had another inquiry coming in from Scottsdale, Arizona, that we're asking for. I don't know. We apparently just hit the SEO lottery, and folks have been hitting us up a lot
Sweet.
for live band karaoke. And as a business owner, I have crossed a threshold. I have achieved a thing. I have pitched my first $10,000 gig
Beautiful.
to this prospective client.
Beautiful.
Just because the parameters around that particular gig, that's the amount of money that would make doing that gig worth our time and effort. So
you pitch it. Have they accepted it?
No.
Okay.
They haven't responded.
We'll find out.
Yeah. Stay tuned. I'm not holding my breath, but we either we don't have to end up doing that gig and we've got the week after Thanksgiving off, or we're a band that now commands that level of coinage.
Right.
So
Right.
there's a lot riding on both sides of that, but I'm just trying to be open-handed about the whole situation.
Totally.
We'll see what happens.
Yeah. Yeah. And then, the real problem will be when they accept, and then you confront, what does a $10,000 gig look like? What do I have to deliver?
Yeah, I mean, we've got a pretty good idea, and we've got like the things that we need to handle, and we'll cover the rest of that, as the date approaches. But if we're taking stock of it, it's 7 months away. And so anything that needed to be prepped for or accounted for, I think we'd have enough of a runway to, on board.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
that's a problem for future Adam to worry about. And
Yes.
that guy's never done
Let
anything
current
for me,
Adam enjoy
so
putting out a $10,000 quote.
there you go. That's where I'm at. All right. So for all of the catching up, I feel like we're pretty much there.
Yeah. So
any
last
other-
week we talked about an interesting plan you had.
Yeah. So the main thrust of last week was, all right, well, I've got this gig coming up, and based on just the best practices, or what's the acronym for business as usual, or like common
KTLO? Keep the lights
which
on?
one's that? No, it's an acronym for best practices, but it's not best practices. I can't think of what.
Whoa.
I don't know. Amber said it to me, and she was like, "Yes, everybody uses this."
Oh,
and I was like,
well,
"I've never heard that
Don't
before."
let her ever tell me, because
Anywho,
yeah.
you'll just have to take my word
Text
for
me.
it.
Ask her.
But yeah.
Ask her and text me.
I will let everybody know. So, trying to come up with the best way to promote this upcoming public event, I sent a pull out to all of y'all and found that the traditional method of promoting shows, like what we did back in the day, where you put flyers up and you hand them out at the venue, is just not something people do anymore. So I was like, well, that seems weird. Let's see if it makes a difference. So our show is a week from yesterday. And yesterday at that venue, my friend and my former boss, actually, he was my boss at Apple. He does a new wave dance party. He's a DJ, and it's called Destination Unknown. And they have now set up, I think, a standing event every, I think it's like third or fourth Saturday at that venue.
Cool.
And so I was like, well, this seems like a really smart thing to promote at, because one, they're already patrons of the venue, and two, they like the kind of music that we would obviously play. So I was like, this seems like a smart group to pitch to.
Yep.
So I went to the Kinko's, and I had 100 flyers printed with a QR code for the ticket link.
And these were just to picture, were these full page flyers or?
They're I think it's 4.25 by 5.5. So not quite
half page flyers. Sorry, quarters.
Yeah.
Quarters. 8.5 by 11, cut in quarters.
more or less vertically oriented.
Yep.
Yeah. So they were pre-cut and all that stuff, and I think I paid $37 with tax for 100 of them.
That's about right.
And so I showed up to the venue to promote our show coming up the following week. I did find out that the graphic that I had sent to the owner to put up on their LED wall between bands did not end up making its way to the AV guy who actually does that thing. So, lesson learned there. But I rolled in.
Did you learn how to actually get stuff to where it matters?
Yes, I actually have that guy's direct email,
Cool.
and if push comes to shove, I will just reach out to him directly for those kinds of things.
Totally.
But I showed up. The event was supposed to start at 8, and I showed up at like 7:30, and they were actually doubling up. They were doing an early show and a late show, and that show ended up running late, which is kind of a weird situation. And you have to have that conversation between what is professional, what is considerate, where these guys were trying to play longer than they were supposed to, and how bands who have done this long enough don't do that.
Don't do that. For the record, anyone listening, start at your start time, end at your end time.
Yeah.
Period.
It doesn't matter if you didn't get to all of them.
Yeah. I have more songs I want to play. Doesn't matter.
It's not about that.
Yeah.
So as the venue cleared out, I was like, all right, well, I'll take this opportunity to kind of like put our flyers all over the venue because it's a pretty big place. And I ordered 100 of them. And so I started kind of laying them out and putting them on tables and at the bar and all these different places. And by the time I laid them all out, I had less than 10 left. And I was like, apparently 100 of these things was not enough. So moving forward, I will keep that in mind. But the cool thing was that because we kind of recognize that these two events are kind of symbiotic in that way, that we want the people who like one to like the other because ultimately it benefits both of us. They were putting stuff out to kind of like set the mood for their show. And part of that was a bunch of candy. So what they ended up doing is, as I was laying these as I was laying these flyers out, somebody would come up behind me and put a couple lollipops on top of the flyer. Nice. So it ultimately is like drawing attention to the thing that we ultimately want attention drawn to. Yeah. And it was a cool touch. And now that I think about it, it's like, well, we'll probably do that for our events also. Cause we'll do like shutter shades and like giveaways and stuff, but like a bag of candy, like that's easy. Yeah. You can do that. It's a low cost thing. Is a bag of
Tootsie Pops or something.
Yeah. It was like Dum Dums and Ring Pops. Yeah. It was like low stakes stuff, but that part was cool. And,
it's the Sweetwater lesson, really.
Oh, for sure.
I want them to do something other than Bit O' Honeys, but still.
Do not besmirch Bit O' Honeys. They're my favorite.
Fair.
I literally only order things from Sweetwater for the Bit O' Honeys because you can't get them anywhere.
Don't tell them that.
Any
Don't
other
tell
way.
them that. Don't tell them.
So I hung out for about an hour and a half, chatted with some folks who were there for the show, took some pictures of my buddy just to do it. I did social media posts like, hey, I'm here. Come check these guys out, and we'll see you guys in a week.
I'll say that the band that was there on the early show sounded pretty great.
Yeah, it was like they were like your standard kind of run of the mill show band,
R&B kind of soul kind of stuff.
They were fantastic.
Sounded really good.
Yep. And the new wave thing just being like they have a really cool like video loop of all these old movies and pop culture stuff, and I was like, I really need to dial that in because it was really, really cool. And made FaceTime with the owner and handed out, I think I was down to like maybe 10 or 15. And I just kind of like, at that point, I stayed until about 9:00 and folks were still piling in. Cause like a DJ night's so much different than a band night.
Yeah.
Cause we're going to play 2.5, 3 hours. A DJ night, it starts at like 8 and it ends at 2. And so you've got folks that are going to be there as the event opens up. And then you've got people that like, they're not going to hit their prime saturation level till closer to midnight. And frankly, I just didn't have that kind of time. And I didn't have enough flyers to even handle it if I did have the time. So I ended up handing the rest of them to the guy who runs the place. And I was like, we'll see you guys in a week, and kind of left it at that. But I saw pictures of the event that it was slammed. It was wall to wall, which meant that 80 some odd flyers got either picked up or looked at or whatever. Cause like, every flat surface in that room had our stuff on it.
Good.
So, and I don't need all of those people to buy tickets. I just need 10%.
Right.
Because we've already got people that are going to be there, but like that many more are going to make it that much easier. So all in all, I would say that showing up and doing it old school was beneficial. on a number of levels. One, I was able to make personal connections with people and kind of like explain why I was there. Two, I was able to show the owner of the venue that I've got skin in the game and I'm willing to like put my money where my mouth is and do all the things I need to do to promote
Vastly
our
undervalued
event.
thing that really the
And
showing partnership with the venue is so important.
yeah. And it's going to be a rough gig. Like I know that you're playing on the 6th
Yep.
also, but like in our market, there's a lot of stuff going on. We had talked about this before we
Yes.
started recording, but Derby days are kind of like a big deal in our area because it's the same day as the Kentucky Derby,
Yep.
and folks put on their big frilly hats and drink mint juleps till they black
I
out.
guess we must be
And
just barely north enough. That's not a thing here. I don't know.
yeah, it is interesting. The other thing is that my good friends in ATL Vice, who are another 80s band, are playing a very similar event at a different venue across town. And the venue is putting a lot of ad buy behind them because I'm seeing it a lot. And I emailed their lead guy and I was like, why must we fight? And he's just kind of making light of it. There's no bad blood. It's all good. But in the process of getting through the promotional thing, another old school opportunity arose. And I don't have it locked in fully just yet. But I got a DM from an old friend of mine who used to be the producer of our alt radio station's morning show. And he was like, hey, do you want to come on to the morning show and talk about members only? Because they had posted something on their social media. It was like, do you have a side hustle? And, what is it? And I was like, well, I play covers.
Right.
Check out my band. And so he hit me up and was like, hey, would you want to talk about this? And I was like, well, yeah, absolutely. When is it going to air? And he's like, well, I think it's going to be on Thursday. And I was like, cool, I've got a show coming up. Do you mind if I write? He's like, yeah, no, absolutely.
Yeah.
So now I was able to go to the venue owner and be like, oh, by the way, I'm going to be promoting the show on the radio this coming week. It's just showing them like, hey, I care about this going well.
Yeah.
And ultimately us both being successful.
Exactly.
So that one isn't locked in just yet. I'll find out tomorrow whether or not it's happening or not. But you better bet your bottom dollar I'll be talking about you guys too, because we're all about sharing all of the good ideas. And it's funny because as I was posting about being there and handing out flyers and stuff, I actually had a couple of bands DM me on Instagram going, where are you getting your resources? Do you work with a graphic designer? And I was like, no, I do it myself. I'm not trained. I'm just resourceful. Also, I have this podcast and a YouTube channel that covers this kind of stuff. You should go check it out. So if you're one of those people who hit me up and you're hearing this episode, I appreciate you reaching out. So,
I had so one of the people who was a regular at my trivia stuff in Lexington, which ended a few months ago, has now been coming to the trivia in Greensboro. And she's the woman who, I shared about this on the pod, as that thing was ending and because that organization was changing how they were doing stuff and whatever, came up to me and said, look, I was in a really dark place a couple of years ago, and coming to this every week gave me so much joy and really made such a huge difference in my outlook and my life. And so last week she was there, and I don't know how it came up, but I mentioned like, she said it. She said, I'm glad that I can still do this because it's meant so much to me. And I said, I shared about that on my podcast. She was like, you have a podcast? Yeah, I do. Government Confidential, it's called. And I did it, like we took some time on an episode to talk about the unpredictable difference we make in people's lives by doing this stupid cover thing that we do. And she and I had that moment that we have when I play like a really emotional song. Like our joke is like, I'm not crying, you're crying.
Yeah.
And we kind of had a moment about that. It's like, she was really touched that I shared about that on the podcast. And so maybe she's listening. If so, Christy, hi, glad you're here.
Ahoy.
Yeah.
Well, yeah. So those are kind of the big things.
Yeah.
There's been a lot of small things though. And we enjoy sharing victories with you guys. And we've got an entire channel on the Patreon Slack about like cool stuff that happens.
One of the channels, twinned channels on our Slack are Rock More
and Suck Less.
And Suck Less, yeah.
Absolutely. This is kind of it's a two-part story. You want to talk about Rockmore? My buddies in Yacht Rock Revue started their opening for Kenny Loggins on his farewell arena tour.
Unbelievable.
And so their first night, they played to a sold out show, this massive arena in I think Fort Worth, and like all these amazing pictures. It was just like the coolest because I mean, it's big time.
Amazing.
It's as big as it gets. Yeah. And just right on the cusp of that, they woke up the very next day and somebody had stolen their entire trailer. All of their gear was taken. And it wasn't just like, it was a group of folks who knew what they were doing. They went through, they looked for air tags and like trackers and stuff. Actually, they posted a video of it today of them driving around and found their saxophone players like stuff just literally like laying in the street. They chucked it out as they were driving away. God. In the big scheme of things, you know, everything's insured. It's not that good. But when you're thinking about
But they're on a tour. They got a show like day after tomorrow.
Yeah, no, they played tonight.
Right.
And people reached out to them and took care of it.
That's great.
And I posted it because these guys are my friends, but even folks in our community shared it. I'll go ahead and shout out Paul Longden, who is Canadian.
Yes.
Well, he's not Canadian. He's an Englishman living in Canada who also shared it. Yeah, I don't want to muddy the waters with the details.
Right.
But I saw a lot of our folks raising visibility for those guys, trying to help them get their gear back. So even at the upper ends of this kind of work, the rug can be pulled right out from under you. Totally. So it sucks, but ultimately they'll be all right, and they'll, you know, they're still out there doing what they're doing. And
and I love that the answer is community.
Yep.
Like at every level, the answer is community.
What? And they said pretty much straight up, it was like, you know, we had a really crappy day, but the amount of people that we saw trying to share stuff and like reaching out and saying, hey, that sucks, or hey, how can we help? Made a big difference, helped lift morale.
We're at the heart of why we're doing this podcast, right? The answer is always community.
100%. Always. But that's where we're at. That's the yin and the yang of the whole situation. So, you know, this week we've got prep for this thing on Saturday, and we'll see if we'll find out if all of this analog meat space promotional work made a dent or not. And I think still it was a worthy experiment, and I've been kind of documenting it as I go. And so not this week, but next Friday I'll have kind of a comprehensive here's how the whole thing went down. Well, no, not this coming Friday, because the gig won't have happened.
No, but the following
2 weeks from now.
Yeah, we'll talk on Sunday.
That's true. And then
get our heads around the new
video
schedule.
Will come out the following week. Oh my God. Yeah. We're still working. Through it.
I do like having a little bit of breathing room between recording and publishing, so we can just edit some stuff. The amount of cleanup that happens between our stream of consciousness recording and what actually comes out of the podcast is it's a lot.
Yeah. And you said you hadn't done this yet, but the software that we use has an AI component that allows you to upload or use existing audio that you've put into the system to do an AI generative voice for you personally, which you can use to kind of punch in if you said the wrong word and you want to correct it. So I was futzing around with that and found out that at my level, I don't quite have all of the words. You only have 1,000-word vocabulary. And if it's a word that wasn't in the vocabulary dictionary that they use, they just put the words gibber or jabber in place of it. So if you want to hear me say something outrageously stupid and intersperse the words gibber and jabber in it, email coverbandconfidential@gmail.com. We'll put it into the episodes.
It would be a special app.
Yeah, for sure. We're having fun. You know, we were ranked top 40 music podcasts. Wait, what country was that? No, I can't remember. Belgium, that's right. We're huge in Belgium this past week. So
big in Belgium.
They speak French, so we can say merci beaucoup.
Half of them speak French, the other half speak German. It's weird there.
Yeah.
But they all like beer and they all like chocolate. And so I think that's a unifying factor.
Agreed. Well, that's all I got.
Me too.
I think this is the wait and see episode. We've got a lot of we got a lot of stuff riding over the next couple of days, so we'll see how it pans out. Well, folks, thanks so much for tuning in. Appreciate each and every one of you. We are getting dangerously close to hitting the monetization on our YouTube channel. So if you don't normally check out our stuff, you should check it out there. And you can do it's a couple things. You're going to get the video version of the podcast, which is just, seeing the two of us kind of converse back and forth, as well as some more pointed, scripted, specific stuff also. So if you haven't checked that out, you should go check it out. We'll put it in the show notes for sure. That's all I got.
Me too.
And we appreciate each and every one of you. And if you want to support the show, you can leave a review. I got a DM from one of our listeners who is a Spotify listener. He's like, hey, I can't find where to leave a review. I was like, hey, man, you're good to go, because you can't leave reviews on Spotify. I appreciate it either way. But if you,
thanks for trying.
If you're on, absolutely. But if you're on Apple Podcasts, leave us a review. It helps with our discoverability, even though we are the highest rated cover band podcast on the internet.
Boom.
Undisputed. Every little bit helps. Or you can do any of the stuff that Adam from the Van Band is about to tell you. That being said, I will call it for this week in Atlanta, Georgia. I am Adam Johnson.
In Greensboro, North Carolina, I'm Dan Ray.
You have been listening to the Cover Band Confidential podcast for the week of May 5th, 2023. Happy Cinco!